Hey, everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and I'm joined with my hosts, Zack and Emmett. Um, Here to recap all things MSU and just the world of Spartan athletics. It's been a little bit. We apologize for the break, but with football bye, we had some scheduling issues, but we're going to quickly hit on the Indiana loss from the last football game, and then we also have some preview for this week's football matchup against Illinois, and also MSU Basketball Champions Classic returns tomorrow. The Spartan basketball team will face Kansas, and so we're going to hit on that as well. A couple other odds and ends we got to catch up with as well. So lots in store for you today. Thanks for joining us. Zach, how you doing today?
Doing good. Just excited to talk about the Champions Classic. Obviously, not super excited to talk about the Indiana game. Probably won't get too much into detail with that. But football is wrapping up here in the next couple of weeks, so they still have a possibility of going to a bowl game, which is I think where we want to be at this point in the year. Going to kind of get a little bit nervous depending on how this week goes. It would be a big win for Michigan State to beat Illinois. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in the next few minutes, but doing good. Just excited to see where Michigan State's at tomorrow night against Kansas. How are you doing, Emmett?
I'm doing pretty good. Like Zach said, it's a pretty exciting time around Michigan State. The football team's making their push for a bowl game in these last three games, and basketball through the first week of the season has looked all right. So I'm excited to see where we go from there. And obviously hockey. Shout out to the hockey team at 7-1 so far. So exciting time around Michigan State for quite a few main sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, let's I guess start with the bad. Unfortunately, MSU Indiana. That's November 2nd's game, so a little about 10 days ago. The Spartans and Hoosiers faced off. First quarter went real well. At the end of the first quarter, the Spartans jumped out to a quick 10-0 lead. Really controlling the line of scrimmage on offense and kind of dictating the pace of the game. Nick Marsh had a ridiculous touchdown catch and kind of showed out a little bit in the first half. But unfortunately, after that, Indiana kind of took over. Curtis Rourke kind of separated himself and played to the ability that we've seen all year. And that was about that. Indiana ended up pulling ahead and winning rather handily, 47-10, with 47 straight unanswered points. Initial thoughts from me, it was just kind of not great. Turnovers, we had no resemblance of a run game. Defensive issues at best, and then unfortunately we had some tough injuries that we had to deal with, which we'll get into. So kind of one that you were just ready to be done with at about halftime, and unfortunately that was something that kind of left a bad taste in your mouth going into the bye. Zach, what do you want to start with in the Indiana game?
Yeah, honestly, if this team could just have the first quarter of the game and the game ends, honestly, it would be a great team lately. It was just kind of weird for Michigan State because it always seems like in the years past, Michigan State has always kind of been one of those teams that really kind of starts really slow, especially that first organized drive. It always seems like we used to start very slow. Under Jonathan Smith this year, at least as of late, it seems like, hey, they've looked really good for the first quarter. And then after that, it's like, where did that team go? What is it? Adjustments? Is it are they just getting tired? I don't think it would be just getting tired, especially one quarter into the game. But it's just one of those games where you look back and just say 47 points unanswered at home against Indiana. And I know this Indiana team is really good. I don't want to take anything away from them. They're a top 8 team in the country right now. I believe they're number 6 in the country in the AP poll, somewhere around that. Don't want to take anything away from them, but giving up 47 unanswered points to Indiana at home is unacceptable for a lot of Michigan State sports, for football as well. I think we talked about before the year that we thought, hey, Indiana is going to be one of those games that we're going to win, honestly. And I don't think a lot of us expected this to happen, but you have to give credit to Indiana. They are absolutely ruthless. Signetti did not care what the score was. He ran up the score. He didn't carry out the starters late in the fourth quarter. It's just one of those games that Michigan State was just overpowered in after the first quarter. And first, for the fans that want to say, hey, let's see what Tommy Schuster looks like at quarterback, this is no shot at Tommy at all. I think Tommy's a good quarterback. I think he's a great quarterback. This game just showed you what it would look like, and it's not Tommy's fault. This offensive line just was getting beat over and over and over and over again. If you don't really have an extremely mobile quarterback with this offensive line, it's going to be a long, long day for the quarterback back there. And without Aiden Childs, we know he throws picks, we know he turns over the ball, but he does keep some plays alive that pocket passing quarterbacks would not. So, no shot at Tommy Schuster. It's just you need Aiden Childs with this offensive line, and he wasn't good in this game at all. Just kind of what Michigan State has been like for the last couple of weeks is you play a good first quarter, and then you just start wearing down offensively, you start wearing down defensively, and next thing you know, you're getting blown out.
Building on what Zack said, so heading into that game in our preview podcast, we had all said Michigan State needs to play basically a perfect game in order to have a shot against Indiana late, and I said it would be a good benchmark against OSU. Well, if it's a benchmark against OSU, the team looks worse than how they did against the Buckeyes earlier in the year with all the fanfare around Coach D'Antonio's name into the Ring of Honor. In terms of how they played, we saw lapses on offense in the offensive line. Almost every player had at least one bad rep. I'm pretty sure Mikael Kamara probably just got another tackle for loss on a Spartan as we're speaking. I believe he finished with 4.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. He was everywhere. Looked like the best player we have played all season, and that includes a couple first-round defensive linemen from Michigan. And then special teams looked just as bad. We had a blocked punt that ended up in a safety, and defense held them out of the score column for the first two drives, and after that it was just a wash. Chuck Brantley went down, and then the whole team seemed to fade out with him. Malik Spencer went down right before halftime. Jordan Turner came back, but could not really make much of an impact in the second half. The team just appeared defeated once Chuck went down early in the second quarter. There was not a lot of positives after that first quarter. Speaking of those drives that we've been talking about, the scripted drives, how MSU used to start slow, in their first two drives of each of their three games since the first bye week, Michigan State is outscoring opponents 23-0 and outyarding opponents nearly 400 yards to 40. So, scripted Lindgren, it might be the best offensive coordinator in the entire world of college football. After that, the Spartans, I believe, would be hard-pressed to put I think they might have put up 23 total as well in everything since those two drives. So, overall, not a winning combination if you can't score outside your first two scripted drives from the start of the game. And we saw that 47 unanswered against Indiana. It was, to say the least, a catastrophe. Players got injured. Also, like Zack said, one last thing, Tommy Schuster came in after Aiden Childs went down with injury. Aiden is expected back for the game against Illinois, but Schuster couldn't do much as a pocket passer with the offensive line letting in quite a few sacks. And in addition, those first two drives are even more impressive when you consider Jerron Glover was out with an injury for that entire game. So Nick Marsh kind of played hero ball for the first two drives, and then everything kind of fell apart for the Spartans.
Yeah, and I hate to sound too coach speaky with this, but it really just came down to some sort of missed execution on almost every single play after the first quarter. On the surface level, when you look at the stats and kind of compare what happened, it doesn't look as bad as the scoreboard indicates. I mean, Indiana only had 5 more first downs. The Spartans held them to 2 of 10 on third down. The Spartans ran 3 more plays than Indiana. They forced 4 punts when Indiana forced 5 from us. Turnovers, Aiden had the 2 picks. Indiana didn't turn the ball over, but, I mean, it wasn't like a glaring disaster. Penalties were the same. Time of possession, the Spartans actually had a minute of possession more than Indiana did. But then you look at total yards. Indiana had 385 total yards. The Spartans had 193. Passing yards were about even, but the rushing yards, when you started taking into account sacks and tackles for loss and stuff, it really bottomed out when we had negative 36 rushing yards. Alontae Brown was our leading rusher in the game. Not many things went right as far as establishing the line of scrimmage and being able to get the running backs loose. And then, the passing game suffered from that. And Aiden going down, of course, isn't going to help that either. So, unfortunately, you look at it, and it's almost probably one of those burn the tape games as the coach. I mean, you look at it once and just move on, because I don't know how much good you're pulling from this game. Thankfully, they did have the bye to come off. The bye week was very helpful earlier in the year. Hopefully, maybe for the same for Illinois this week. And if you guys have any more to add, feel free. But I kind of want to get into Illinois and just kind of do the same, burn the last one, and go look forward.
Just a quick shout out to true freshman defensive back Jalen Thompson. He might have been one of the few bright spots on the team, especially after Chuck went down. He had 6 tackles and a pass breakup, the only pass breakup from a defensive back not named Chuck Brantley during that Indiana game. That might be the only bright spot I'm seeing from the defense after injuries and everything took over. Also, another injury note is Anthony Jones Jr. went down, and he is expected. I believe Coach Smith said he was hopeful Jones would be playing against Illinois.
I was just going to say, I think that's kind of like a really good navigation point to kind of like where we are at right now with after the bye week, is that this team going into this Illinois game isn't necessarily the most healthy team in the world, and this is an Illinois team that, while they've gotten some big wins earlier this year, they've also lost to a team like Minnesota, lost to a team like Oregon, got blown out against Oregon. I know we did as well. But they end up beating Michigan as well when they were ranked 24th in the country. So this is a team going into Illinois that needs to play well, that needs to get a little bit healthier. And if you look at what Illinois has kind of going for itself, Luke Altmaier has been pretty good for Illinois this year. He's done a really good job of protecting the ball. Seems like every quarterback we go against has a really good job of protecting the ball at this point. Our secondary, again, is injured, quite a bit injured, so don't know what that secondary is going to look like, but he has 16 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, a little less than 1,900 yards. They also have McRae as well, is their leading rusher. Josh McRae, he has a little bit over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, so he's kind of someone you really want to watch out for. And then there's just a couple of players here and there that you really need to watch out for, at least catching the ball too. So secondary is going to be a big issue for Michigan State health-wise, so they're really going to have to do a good job of either turning over Luke Altmaier or just doing a good job not allowing the big play.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we're going to really have to focus on is reestablishing on offense that line of scrimmage and kind of controlling the clock a little bit better. With the defense being shorthanded, and I believe we mentioned it, if we didn't, it also, Jonathan Smith said today, those hoping for secondary help in the future, reinforcements coming. It sounds like Chance Rucker and Dylan Tatum probably won't be back in the regular season. Maybe if we did make a bowl game, they would be able to play in that, but certainly not this week, probably not for Purdue or Rutgers either. So we're going to be shorthanded. If Chuck doesn't go, that's going to be a big hole to fill. Someone like Justin Denson, the freshman, may have to step up a little bit. Edwards, potentially, too, if he could, play a little more consistent. But we're going to have to try to limit damage against the pass, because I got to imagine that's really what Illinois is going to try to exploit. Their team, it's a good team. I know they've kind of flirted with being ranked and unranked throughout the year. Had some good wins against a Michigan team. Had a really crazy win against Purdue. Kansas is, I think, a better team than what their record indicates, but that was another close one. Seems like most of the games on Illinois' schedule this year have been close contests. There haven't really been a lot of blowouts, either for or against them. So if that trend continues, it's going to be probably a tightly contested battle, and MSU is going to really have to take care of the football and kind of limit mistakes and hopefully maybe dictate the play and try to take it to them instead of sitting back and having to play reactionary football. They do enter the game, Illinois. As of the time we started recording, which is Monday night, the line is currently Illinois as a 2.5-point favorite, thanks to FanDuel. Game time is going to be 2:30 Eastern Saturday from Champaign. I didn't look up the TV. I think it's on, what is it? Fox Sports 1, I think?
Yeah.
I think
so.
FS1, yeah.
Okay, Fox Sports 1 for those who are watching. And then, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You guys kind of hit the players to watch for. Illinois has some playmakers for sure. Luke Altmaier, I think's shown some flashes at times. He can be really good. Consistency, I think, has been the issue. So it'll be, hopefully, he's completing, 63% of his passes. So if we can kind of keep him around that, that may give MSU a shot, but it's a taller task than what we may have the the players for.
Also looking at the defense, Gabe Jackas, I believe, Yakas, he has 8.5 tackles for loss this year, 6.5 sacks. In addition, 3 forced fumbles, and we've seen fumble issues out of Aiden Child in the past, so that is definitely something to watch heading into the game. Additionally, I believe Xavier Scott has 3 interceptions this season, including a pick 6. So Aiden Child is going to have to be on guard with the football looking at this team. However, outside of Gabe, there is not a single Illinois player with more than 2.5 sacks on the season. So the Spartans hopefully get a little bit of a break in terms of pass rush decimating their team after what happened against Indiana. That said, the Spartans failed to record a sack of their own against Indiana and are now 21 quarters removed from a sack, and that is something that if the Spartans want to have a good chance to pull the upset over this Illinois team, they probably need to find a way to get to Altmaier, disrupt him, to basically get that first sack of Big Ten play since Maryland out of the way.
And what's crazy about this team, especially this defensive line, is I know early on kind of the teams that Michigan State was playing, again, the level of competition wasn't there. But if you look at this defensive line, like, there's talent here. Like, you have guys on the defensive end spots that, like Thompson, that has talent. You have guys in the middle that have talent. Maybe Maverick Hansen isn't like the biggest guy on pressure-wise, but like you have guys there that have shown potential that they can get to the quarterback. And even when Michigan State brought pressure from Rossi, which isn't very often, surprisingly, I think early on in the year they did a little bit more than they are doing right now. They just never were getting home. Kind of like the Lions, per se, it just seems like they never get home. And even like the Lions at least get pressure on the quarterback. Here it just kind of seems like the quarterback's just sitting in the pocket, just kind of like, not like taking his time, but like doesn't really seem like they're too much in a hurry there. So I'd love to see a little bit more pressure from the defensive line, maybe even bring like a corner or a safety blitz, like change something up here. Like, I think just getting a sack in this game would definitely help this defense maybe perk up a little bit. But again, this is going to be a game that we've constantly said. It's going to be won and lost at the line of scrimmage. Michigan State for the last few games have been getting dominated at the line of scrimmage. Now against Michigan, you can say that Michigan State was able to run the ball pretty well. Well, they were able to protect Aiden Childs extremely well. Last game against Indiana, they weren't able to do either of that. Michigan State hasn't gotten pressure on any quarterback in a really long time as well. If you have the other quarterback sitting in the packet for 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, it doesn't matter how much and how good your secondary is, because you're not going to have guys that are going to be able to defend that long. Like, you don't even have guys in the NFL. Like, some of the best guys in the NFL, I know the NFL is a different level of things, but, like, you can't expect a secondary, especially a secondary that is as banged up as this one is, to defend for that long. You have to get pressure on the quarterback. If they do not do that, then this is a huge thing of, like, can they win any of these games? Now, I know you kind of wonder, like, look at Purdue. Like, Michigan State should win against Purdue. You have to win against either Illinois or Rutgers in order to go to a bowl. There's a possibility you go to a bowl with 5. That kind of depends on, I believe, like, academics and other factors in as well. So you obviously don't want to factor in that, and it's one of those things where, like, some years, like, people, like, win 6 games but don't go to a bowl not very often. But if you get this win, that takes off so much more pressure off of this team headed into the last 2 weeks. If you get this win and you beat Rutgers, you beat Purdue, if you go into a bowl with 7 wins, I think people would be happy. If you lose this game, though, you're going to have to win next 2 games. And while Rutgers, you look at the quarterback position, you're like, they don't really have a great quarterback there. They also have a really good running back that can cause so many teams issues. And then you really want to go into the last game against Purdue, needing to win a game. And I know it's Purdue. I know it's not at Purdue, so it's not like a scary night game or anything. But do you really want to be in that situation if you're Coach Smith? Probably not. But would you feel kind of decently confident you can go to a bowl and clinch it? I think you would, but getting a win here, in my opinion, would really, really help kind of the, I don't want to say, like, distrust, or I don't want to say anything like that far, but, like, how upset people would drop quite a bit if you win this game.
I do think Purdue and Rutgers are flipped. It's Purdue first, then Rutgers.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
So
yeah, it's easier to look at going to a bowl at 5-5 than it will be on the upswing of 4-6. I'll agree with you there, Zach, because 4-6, you're fighting for your life. I mean, 4-5 you basically are too, but 4-6 it is fighting for your life, and definitely fighting to get to 500 feels a lot more deflating than heading into a game at 500 with 2 games to go to make a bowl game.
Yeah, absolutely. And Purdue being 1-7, yeah, they've looked bad against some, teams, but they've certainly played. I mean, they played this Illinois team super close, lost in overtime. Played Northwestern super close, lost in overtime. So it's possible, but it's you never know what happens. So that'll wrap up. I think our analysis. My last sort of thing is just kind of who to watch for. Like we said, trying to get to the quarterback is going to be a paramount for MSU. One little stat I wanted to note: Luke Altmaier has carried the ball 77 times for Illinois this year. He's not necessarily a mobile threat in the same breath as like Aiden Childs would be. He's not going to be a danger to consistently break big plays with his legs, but he can move, he can scramble, he can avoid the rush, and a lot of RPO is designed to where he just tucks it and runs it and can get a couple yards fairly easily. So being able to shut that down is going to be paramount. And then Zachary Franklin, I think to me is the bigger receiving threat than maybe even Pat Bryant, even though Pat Bryant has more yards this year. Zachary Franklin can be a difference maker. Those of you who played in NCAA 25, maybe in your dynasty mode, notice that a few years down the road, he has the potential to be really good. So that's where I'll leave that. Score predictions real quick, and then we've got to move on to basketball. Like I said, 2.5 points right now as Illinois the favorite. I have a feeling that line's going to grow a little bit, especially if no Chuck and other injuries kind of linger into the week. So, unfortunately, I do think Illinois wins, and I do think Illinois covers. I'm going to put it probably maybe a 27-17 game. First touchdown, I'll take... I don't know. I don't know. I'll take Nate Carter rushing.
All right. I was also going to say 27-17, so I'll scramble for a backup here. I'll say I'd say give me Illinois winning 24-13. First touchdown, I'll say after how the run game performed last week, I'll go with the receiving threat and hope that the run game strikes early and often. I'll say give me Nick Marsh receiving touchdown.
Okay, hoping you wouldn't choose that score because that was actually my score. But let's go with 27-17 Illinois, and first touchdown, just because this is what it's been all year, is Jack Bailing.
Hey, I do want to really quickly shout out Adam Nightingale and the hockey team again. Big season or weekend sweep against the Ohio State Buckeyes, who are the, I believe, 13th ranked team going into the weekend. MSU again just has looked dominant in hockey outside of the one game against BC, which we've talked about how good BC is. They looked kind of good. Trey Augustine played phenomenally this weekend. You had scoring up and down the lineup, which is good to see. You're not relying on just one player to fill the score sheet for you. I know Isaac Howard had a goal. MSU captain Red Savage, Red Wings prospect, had another one as well. So good to see. Unfortunately, I'd like to divvy up more MSU hockey talk, but there really hasn't been a ton to discuss because, well, they've just kind of handled business and taken care of business. So hopefully that continues. They're up this weekend at home again with a big series against Notre Dame. That'll be Friday and Saturday at Munn. Friday's game, puck drop is at 7.
Oh, Saturday is going to be busy because in addition to basketball playing Bowling Green and hockey playing Notre Dame, if you're up in East Lansing, come out early, go to women's soccer. They have their NCAA tournament opener against, I believe, Western Michigan.
Yep.
Yes,
Western Michigan at 12 p.m. in DeMartin Stadium in East Lansing. So if you are going up for the basketball game or the hockey game, go early, get there by noon, go to DeMartin to watch the Lady Spartans take on Western Michigan in the NCAA tournament. Hopefully they can make a run this year too.
Yeah, they really finished strong. They had overall a really good regular season, and so now we're into tournament time, and hopefully they can string together a couple of wins and keep it going. But the Central 11 me always wants to root against Western anyways, so go green there because we can't let the Broncos beat us ever. So, but yeah, that's all I got. Anything you guys want to add? Any last thoughts before we call it for this week? All right, well, there you have it. We'd like to thank everybody joining us again. We appreciate the support as always. Emmett will be in Illinois covering the football game this weekend. He will not be in Atlanta covering the basketball game tomorrow. We need to
Postage didn't work this time.
Yeah, we need to get these big games a little bit closer to Michigan. If it was in Indy this year, maybe we could have worked something out. But yeah, sure. So we appreciate Emmett doing the media coverage from Champaign this weekend, and then I'm sure I will be and the rest of us will be tweeting on our personal accounts our thoughts about the game and tomorrow and Saturday, and then we'll get back at you next week with a recap of Illinois, get you ready for Purdue, and recap the basketball things, hopefully some good news in the hockey and women's soccer worlds. Real quick, shout out Ben Nichols, Davison High School football prospect, a big offensive line target for Michigan State football. Just narrowed down his top 9. MSU is in it. They look to hopefully remain steadily involved. I know Coach Mahalchek has been wanting him quite badly. So hopefully the full court press is on for him. I live in the Davison area and I've kind of watched him, and the kid's going to be a stud. So hopefully consider MSU. Go green. So that'll be it for us today. Tune in. We, again, appreciate any likes, shares, comments. If you have any questions, email us at our email address or comment on any of the socials, that sort of thing. So, boys, I appreciate you joining me tonight, and go green.
Go white.
Go white.